bring more of a spotlight to mental health awareness issues, because either we or possibly likely someone we know has had to deal with mental health. And the whole purpose of Mental Health Awareness Month is to remove the stigma that is often associated with it. Somebody breaks their leg, we tell them to go to the doctor, we bring them some chicken, whatever. But mental health issues, a lot of times we tend to not want to deal with it. And so hopefully our presenters today are going to help to remove those stigmas so that we can help better our own lives as well as those that we know. Our presenters here today, I know we're waiting on one, but is a member of our sorority and chapter, Dr. Teresa Donaldson DePass. She is an advocate for mental health issues. She has taught and lectured at various universities and other places throughout the country. And most importantly, she wanted me to know she's amazing, gorgeous, and what was the other thing you said? All of that, okay. So I will let her tell you more about herself. Thank you for your attention, and without any further ado, and I'm sorry, Dr. DePass is also a part of the chapter's mental health committee, because it is a target initiative that we bring attention to this area of health. Thank you.
Thank you. The doctorate is coming, but we're working on it. So, as she said, I'm Teresa Donaldson, and as I sat listening to Pastor Dalton, I get onto this fight, run, flight. He took my whole speech, and I'm saying, what do you need me for, Pastor Dalton? Everything that I had planned to say, you have already said. So I'll say ditto, ditto, and ditto again. Amazing job in terms of how you highlighted mental health. He talked about agonizing moments matters. That is a summation of everything about mental health. The stigma, as we have up there, is about people being afraid to talk about their own experiences. So what I'm going to do is, I guess the eyesight isn't all that good, so I have to decide which one is better for me to look at. Clearly, I'm technologically compromised because it's not moving. And this is Dr. Daphne King, and I want you to give her an applause. She's coming from far, far, far Virginia. She left home at the wee hours of the morning to be here, and as you know, public transportation is not always what it should be on a holiday weekend. So just her being here should tell you about her commitment to being here and to the service of mental health. Thank you, Dr. King. Okay, so one of the first things I want to talk about is the fact that, and we're going out of order because he had to cue me up. So if you hear something twice, that means you're going to recall it a lot better later on. So Black Americans are 20% more likely to experience a mental health condition compared to white Americans. And that is the statistics that came from the National Alliance of Mental Health. But here's the interesting thing. Only 10%, so if we're looking at 100 people in this room who have a clearly identifiable mental illness, and she's going to talk further about what those look like, only 10% will seek help. Why do you think we don't seek help? Thank you. So what our audience members said, and we have someone else who's going to give us their thoughts as well. So while we're doing that, I'll let you know that 1 in 5 persons, 1 in 5, I'm not going to ask you to count out 1 to 5 in this room, please don't. But I will tell you that 1 in 5 suffer from some kind of mental illness. And so when we talk, and Dr. King is going to talk further about that, when we talk about, go ahead, thank you.
Also to piggyback off of what was mentioned, I think, there's the embarrassment degree, but also, and I think just from my own personal experiences with those that I know who are kind of navigating that space right now, there is they kind of minimize it because it's not something that's seen. And so I think there's always the comparison, if you have a broken leg, you're going to go to the doctor about it, but because it's something that's not seen and it's easy to hide, I think within our community, we definitely assume that it's not as serious or as worthy of attention, professional attention.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. But I will tell you, it is serious. We think that, but it is really, indeed, very serious. Without mental health, there is no health. It will impact every aspect of your life: work, church, how you manage your home life, your children, your family, your school, everything. It will impact those things. Oftentimes, it is more serious than a physical health challenge because people think that you can go to your physical health practitioner and they can give you a pill. I'm here to tell you that you can still get a pill for mental illness, but you have to first admit that there is a problem and you have to go and seek help. And we're going to get some more into that. So let's talk about stigma. So Black Americans, as I said, are 20% more. We need to go back. I'm truly challenged. Okay, so stigma is a negative attitude or belief that discourages people from seeking help for a mental health condition, and we talked about that. So some of the things that discourage us are, as we say up there, we don't believe in the science. We think it's something that you're doing, something that somebody did to you. And if you talk about African cultures, and not just identify Caribbean culture as well, or even parts in these United States, or right here in Washington, D.C., we attribute mental illness to everything except what it really is. So there's a science to it, but we are not acknowledging that there is indeed a science to mental illness. And so it's science. If it's science, you can't help it. If somebody comes and say, oh, my daughter has found with cancer or breast cancer or something, oh my God, what can we do? Can we help you take her to the doctor? Can we, everybody in the church on the care committee, I don't know what you call it here, but somebody's going to say, I'm going to pick her up every Wednesday for treatment, and I am going to take her and be sure that you have respite from her care. That's not the way it happens in mental health. We shun, we step back. So when you need the most help, because living with somebody who has a mental illness is not a joke. It is really, really serious. Because even though they don't intend to hurt you or the people around you, their words hurt. They hurt themselves. You live in constant fear. You are wondering, oh my God, are they going to commit suicide? Are they going to commit homicide? But let me hasten to clarify. The majority of people who live with a mental illness do not commit those acts. Let me be really clear. There are so many of us who live with trauma, the results of trauma, depression, mild depression, so what I call an active depression. I'm not going to describe it in any further detail because our esteemed Dr. King will talk more about it. But just the everyday stressors in life. You may come in and you may say to Mrs. Smith, how are you? And she'll snap at you. It has nothing to do with you that day. Please believe me. It is what she came into this room with that you know nothing about. And unless she shares that with you, you will still not know. So I'll move on. I don't want to get ahead of myself. If we are at work and we, as people of color, we suffer microaggressions. I think I'm all that. I'm awesome. I'm a bag of chips. Why is it that this person over here who looks differently keeps getting those promotions? Do you think that's going to affect me in the long run? Yes, it will. So one of the things that we have to do is to acknowledge that there is something wrong. And I'm going to share a personal experience that happened to me. After 9/11, I noticed that I used to get real palpitations. My heart used to jump a lot. Under bridges, I'm approaching a bridge and I'm going, what's going on? I never made the connection. So being a mental health professional, I went to the doctor and I said, something is wrong with my heart. He said, does it beat all the time? What's going on? He said, that's anxiety. Those people said they were going to crash into bridges. I internalized that without knowing. So once I knew that, oh, this is me acknowledging that there is indeed some anxiety responses to 9/11. And what was interesting, my doctor told me, you wouldn't believe how many people have been similarly affected. Okay? A lot of people, their response may not have been palpitations on the bridges. It could be a lot of things. It could be so many other things. The January 6th, it really rocked our boats because we thought Washington, D.C. is a safe area. We have all of these people out here who are protecting us. Not so much. And so if you think about it, those things affect you without your even acknowledging it. So I'm inviting you to think about what are some of the changes in your own body. Why are you getting nauseous when you go to a certain place? Why are you feeling anxious? Why are you coughing? Those are some physical responses that we may not acknowledge. Physical responses to stress, trauma, anger, the things that we experience on a daily basis that we have not acknowledged and attributed it to the right source. So we're talking about, we like to say, you know, Daphne's crazy, girl. That girl is so crazy. You watch the news, they talk about, yeah, the crazies are loose. There's a full moon. Crazies come out at night. Do you think I'm going to go out there and acknowledge that I'm crazy? Would you? No. So we perpetuate that stigma. We say things that, so I have become very intentional about correcting that language. It doesn't matter to me who is saying it. I said, why are you calling that person crazy? It's written, it's all over the literature. This person is crazy. Folks who have every alphabet behind their name are still calling people crazy. You may live with a mental illness, but you are not your mental illness. And the kinds of things that we experience on a daily basis, and I'm not even going to ask people to a show of hands. We all, everyone in this room has experienced some anxiety, some anger, even some mild and passing depression. We all have passed through it, some of us more successfully than others. Am I telling a story? We're in church now, so you know I wouldn't lie. Let me hear it, amen? All right now. So that's what I'm talking about. So when we talked about stigma, the wrong way, I apologize. So let me ask you, okay. So let's talk about the impact of stigma on our community. We addressed it a little bit. Please keep track of time because I know we only have a brief. What's the time? Oops, hurry up. I'm sorry. So we talk about, so there's a post, Dr. Joy Greer. She talks about trauma in a different way. She talks about the effect of slavery. And one of the examples that she gives that I found really astounding, So this beautiful lady right here has a son. He's all that. He's handsome, he's good, he's well-mannered, he's well-behaved, he's doing well in school. And Mrs. Smith, who might be of a different persuasion, she will come in and she says, oh, my son, Benjamin, is an awesome kid. He's wonderful. He's on his way to Harvard. And she goes, oh, yeah, my son is good, but Lord, he gives a lot of problems. And she begins to cut him down. That was astonishing to me. And we do it without even knowing. We begin to balance all of the positive things of our children, of our community, with some negativity. Think about it. Why is that? We do that because, think back to slavery. If you're all that good, what's going to happen? You are going to get moved to the next plantation. Your child, who you value, who you give birth to, is going to be sent to be sold, especially if the person is big, and I'm not going to describe how they view women. So we have to diminish the virtues of our children, and that's called post-slavery syndrome. And I'm thinking about it, I'm saying, my God, how many times have I been guilty of that? None of our children are perfect, right? But we do it. We will always find something, not quite 100%, but something that's going to diminish or detract from all of the awesome things that our children have done. And we need to be careful. I'm not saying you can't face reality and say this child needs a good old-fashioned whipping, yes, but you keep that within us here. You don't go outside and tell other folks. You take the corrective actions that you need to take, but stop diminishing. We're not going anywhere. Yes, the police have some work to do to not do whatever it is that they do, and I hope I'm not offending any police officers or law corrections officers in here. But we have a little ways to go, and that also contributes to our trauma. So I'm going to, hope I can pull this up real quick. Just give me a minute. So there's this young man, and we're talking about faith and the church, and he says something that is absolutely, let me see if I can find it real quickly. Just give me 1 minute.
There's a point where your character, where he goes, cover me, I'm reloading. Cover me, I'm reloading. And I'm telling you, like, it sounds crazy, but that's something that God's put on my heart a lot. Cover me, I'm reloading. And for those of you guys don't play, what it simply means is, I'm not dead. I'm not even down. But right now, I did run out of ammo. I ran out of bullets. And we have a real enemy coming. We have a real enemy coming. If you don't cover me while I'm reloading, I may die. I may not make it. No, the journey continues, but I probably won't be able to be there if you don't cover me. And so if you're telling someone to cover you in the game, it's probably because they do have ammo. They haven't run out of their rounds yet. And it's so dope. But God really began to speak to me. He began to really show me how in this walk, y'all, we're going to need people that know how to cover us when we're reloading. Can we make it make sense? I'm navigating through a breakup.
Pastor talks about
And
that
I'm in
this
a lot
morning.
of pain. Cover me. I'm reloading. Money's very low. I can't seem to make ends meet. Cover me. I'm reloading. I am mourning loss. friends, jobs, you name it, cover me. I am reloading. We need people in our lives that are going to be able to do life with us in a way where if we say cover me, they know exactly what to do. See, whenever I'm down, whenever I'm low, whenever I just need a little help, I'm talking about in the spirit. I need my warriors, I need my soldiers to be praying. They get a simple text, cover me. I need y'all to cover me. And if you really want to get good, give them a target. Don't just leave everybody out there, oh, pray for me. No, tell them what you need prayer for. Cover me. Sometimes you don't have the words, and so like I said, cover me will do. But I'm telling y'all, it's very special when you got people in your life that understand that life isn't always going to be pretty. And we have a real enemy, and that's the thing. It's not just about life, it's about the fact that we have an enemy. And he's coming after this right here, our mind. And sometimes when life gets so crazy, things start to shake you up and you're just a little unsettled. Your judgment is not always clear, so you need somebody to cover you because you're reloading. Reloading can look like you need to go before God. Reloading looks like you just need a break and you need to reset here for a moment. Reloading looks like, hey, I need to take a walk. Reloading looks like, hey, I need to take some time away from this or that. So I'm encouraging you guys, don't be afraid to ask for help. A lot of people struggle with asking for help. And so if you struggle to ask for help, teach your squad your key words. Let them know, cover me. I'm reloading. Let them know what that means. It makes it a little easier if you struggle with saying, hey, I need help right now. I'm telling you, this stuff is real. And I'm encouraging everybody to be praying for your friends. Pray for your people. Pray for your family members. And pray for yourself.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there.
Where can you get Wi-Fi?
That resonates with me because when he talks about ammunition, he's talking about what it is inside you, your strength, your courage, whatever it is inside you that make you want to get up tomorrow morning and face another day. You're low on that ammunition right now. So and I'm calling on Mrs. Smith because we talk a lot. And if I say to her, cover me, she probably knows what I'm talking about. That means that day she's a little stronger than I am, and she can cover me. Make sure somebody knows what you are going through. I beg you, there is no shame to this game. Everybody needs to be covered at some point in time. The big, all-encompassing coverer, if you will, is Jesus Christ. He's going to cover us. But some days it feels like, where are you? I can't find you. Sometimes all you have to say is, Lord, have mercy. And he knows the wishes of your heart. And he will come through. But there are days you're going to feel like, man, you're taking an awfully long time. And I don't mean to be on those kind of terms with God, but sometimes I feel like, listen, we need to have this talk now. This is a joke. What is going on here? Have you all ever felt like that? Yes. Come on now, Jesus, let's step this up because I'm running out of ammunition. There is nothing wrong with telling someone, cover me. And if you have your squad, you have your friends, they will know what you mean because somebody knows what you're going through. And I'm going to hurry up because we still have Dr. King, so I'll wrap up a lot. So do you know the meaning of Negro spirituals? Tell me some of them. Anybody can just shout out a Negro spiritual. Anything else? Okay. So, exactly. Do you know what those Negro spirituals mean, what they're founded in? I didn't hear you.
Our sanity during slavery.
Thank you. Those songs are songs with a message. They are deliverance. That means the aggressions, the pain, the hurt, all of those things started all the way back then. But we are a strong people. We get together when there was no way to get together, and we have found a way to cover each other. So one of them that I sing a lot is walk through your storm. It says here, ride out your storm. Jesus is with you. Hold on, he's coming. So we all go through these storms. I mean, my mother used to say, in every life, some rain may fall, must fall. It could be a drizzle, it could just be a regular afternoon rain, or it could be a storm. But when you go through that storm, you have to be able to find someone to cover you. And I'm going to end here, and if we have time, I'll come back, but I'll give Dr. King an opportunity to bring her.
All right, good morning, everyone. And thank you all so much for your patience this morning. And to use myself as an example, if I wasn't engaging in activities to keep myself healthy on all levels, having that kind of challenge this morning with getting somewhere where you wanted to be and needed to be at a certain time, for someone that is dealing with a mental illness and not able to cope with those kind of just challenges that come up in everyday life, it would have derailed them. Everyone responds a little bit differently, so someone experiencing any type of mental health issue or mental health challenge, that could have completely just thrown them off course, especially someone dealing with anxiety. They may not have even been able to get up and speak in front of you. So because I have been doing that work, I have, am able to adjust, and I was able to cope and do some things like contacting Teresa to let her know that, hey, I'm running a little bit late, this is where I am, and not panicking, and knowing that I would still be able to present before you. So as we talk about mental health, for me, it's really important to start with also taking an inventory of where you are. And even as a therapist, I do this to myself. Anything that I ask my clients to do, I do myself. And so sometimes it's just knowing where you are and being self-aware. And as Teresa was talking, it put me in the mind of making sure we understand how we use language. So I am also mindful of not using words like crazy or old terms that we used before, like retarded. We used to hear that growing up. And so being mindful of language is really going to be key. One thing that I often do with clients in session to help them be a little bit self-aware and understand where they are and understand where their functioning is we do little rating scales or activities to kind of take a few minutes and think about where your functioning is. Sometimes we often don't want to acknowledge it because then that means that we have to take that next step to getting help. And I probably should have backed up a little bit and also said that I, as a licensed clinical social worker, as a therapist, I am very passionate about mental health and educating about mental health and destigmatizing mental health for all people, but especially communities of color. And I do understand and have to acknowledge every time I do a workshop like this that I do understand why our community has a mistrust of going to any other doctor or seeking help. And I know it's because of so many injustices and things that have happened with, say, like the Tuskegee experiment, and now we're finding out about Henrietta Lacks. And I know that makes us distrust going to seek help and going to medical professionals, but I think we should use that information to just ask the right questions when we go to these places and not necessarily shy away from seeking the help or going to medical appointments. But a rating system that we can do just to take a quick inventory of where each one of us are, and you don't have to share this with anyone else, and you can use this even outside of today's workshop. Scale of 0 to 10. I always use kind of a 0 to 10 scale, and you can do this quick evaluation of yourself on any given day. If you give yourself a rating of 10, that means that you feel amazing. Everything is all good. You're able to navigate life even when challenges come. It's all good. A rating of between 5 and 7, what kind of passes okay. You're doing okay. You have some challenges. You tend to recover okay from a stressful day without going off the rails, without drinking a whole bottle of tequila or, smoking a whole bowl of marijuana or anything else, or eating that whole bag of chips. A rating of 3 means I'm not really feeling fully okay. I'm really overwhelmed by life. This is where I may need to reach out to a friend or reach out to someone for help. Nothing is going the way I want it to go. I feel like I can't catch a break. And then a rating of 0 would mean that you are at the lowest level, where you really are in distress. You feel like your circumstances are bleak, and you have 0 desire to go on with life. And you can use that type of rating scale on any given day. And when I work with clients in session, I often will have them do some kind of mood tracking, which we're going to get into as we talk about some resources. But I have them do mood tracking every day, because often we're not always sure how often or how long we've been experiencing something. And so often when I have clients come see me, they'll say, oh, I'm anxious, or I've been anxious. And when I ask them, well, how long have you been anxious, or how often do you experience any, type of anxiety or occurrence with anxiety, they really can't tell me. And I ask those kind of questions because as we talk about some of the different mental disorders, there is a certain time factor associated with them. And sometimes they say, when we use the guidebook that we use to diagnose someone, they'll often say like certain symptoms occur 2 weeks or longer, or 6 months or longer, or what are the conditions that you're experiencing with that particular disorder. And if you can't really tell a therapist that, you could also be misdiagnosed, which sometimes happens. So I do a lot of mood tracking with clients, pretty similar to the activity that we just did. So hopefully you've taken note of kind of where you are with your own functioning. And I am going to continue on. Hopefully I'm going in the right direction. Oops. All right. Well, I think I'm going to maybe improvise a little bit. So I want to focus primarily on things like depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation. Those 3 mental disorders generally have pretty similar signs and symptoms. They're also probably the most common that we would experience or that I see from clients. And I will say that with anxiety, there has definitely been an increase in anxiety since the pandemic. There, I'm sure, are going to be coming out quite a few studies to talk about why and what the effects of the pandemic has been on individuals experiencing anxiety. And I will say that it looks different for each person, and it manifests a little bit differently for each person. So some of just the kind of basic signs and symptoms for managing your mental health for depression, anxiety, is you're going to see a change in appetite. You can also see a change in your weight, a significant change. So either your weight is going up in a short amount of time, or your weight is decreasing and you're not really trying to diet. You also will see maybe a loss of interest in activities that you have found previously enjoyable. And those are probably the primary symptoms that I would see. Some of those symptoms are also symptoms of anxiety. But with anxiety, you're also going to see excessive worry, a lot of worry about future things, and excessive worry to the point where there's an impact to your daily functioning. So worrying and not being able to sleep, so that's going to also be a symptom of depression, as well as anxiety. And also with suicidal ideation, you're going to see some of those same symptoms. In addition to, for suicide, you are also going to see an individual who's starting to give away prized possessions or their favorite possessions. You're going to see an individual whose behavior may be changing, so their behavior may become a little bit more aggressive than what their typical behavior is. And so I'm going to pause there and say that is why it's so important for us to understand our own selves and our own, kind of functioning, what's typical for our own behavior. And I'm going to use the word typical a lot because I'm also moving away from using words like normal, because when we use normal, that means that something or someone has to be abnormal. And, we all know that in past times, mental health professionals have pathologized or made things that we experience as people of color abnormal. And so I don't use the word normal, I say typical. And so you also want to know what's typical for the people around you. You want to know what's typical for those that you live with, what the typical behavior, is for a friend in case someone does come to you for help, or also so that you know how to talk to someone else about getting help. And so again, with suicidal ideation, you're looking at that change in behavior. With anxiety and depression, the other thing that we want to look at is a change in functioning and how the symptoms are really impacting your daily functioning. So, it's really normal to be a little anxious. It's a natural part of life to be anxious, especially when we know we have to take a test, especially, in school, or we have to go to the doctor. Even if we think nothing physically is wrong with us, going to the doctor, it's really pretty natural to feel anxious about that. It's natural, to be anxious before a big trip, and anxious or excited, that kind of anxiety. But you want to look at, okay, is this continuing on past that kind of stressor or past that event, or is it continuing to impact my day-to-day functioning? Am I anxious to the point where I'm not able to focus on anything else? I can't do my work. I can't finish my homework with school. I'm not eating. I'm waking up in the middle of the night and just staying up, not being able to sleep. And sleep is also really important for managing mental health, and it's also a sign or symptom for many of the at least the three mental disorders that I just mentioned: depression, anxiety, and even suicidal ideation. Not sleeping, having a disturbance in sleep. So you really do want to know, again, what your typical level of functioning is. Going back to suicidal ideation, in some research that I've done, there was a point in time where actually being African American was a protective factor against suicidal ideation or against dying by suicide. Within the last, I'm gonna say 15 years, there has been a change in that. And now we have seen a significant increase in people of color, African Americans, dying by suicide and dying by acts of suicide. And, so it led me to kind of ask why. So I'm going to ask you all that same question because I have an idea of the answer based on my research. But why do you think there has been an increase in suicide attempts, as well as individuals from the Black community dying by suicide? There are no right or wrong answers.
Okay, I'm gonna guess just lack of support.
Okay, lack of support. All right. Yes.
I'm trying to out, but increase in social stressors and increase in violence. Oh, sorry. I'm saying increase in social stressors and increase in visible violence that we see and experience, not just in our communities, but we see on television as well and in media.
Okay. Yep. So lack of support, increase in violence, increase in social stressors. Anyone else?
Economics. I
Economics.
think since COVID, so many people without jobs, and just so much going on.
I would add social media.
Yes, we're gonna have a little talk about social media.
I want to say knowing how to deal with all the things that we go through, like on a normal daily basis.
Absolutely, definitely not understanding or knowing how to just deal with those day-to-day things that we go through. And all of those answers are correct, but the one thing that the research showed was that there was a point in time where, for the African American community, we had a strong faith. And I thought about that with when Teresa was talking, and that was our protective factor. And within the last 15 years, we have also seen, I think, a decrease in how we have previously as a community engaged with our faith. And part of that is for all of the reasons that you all said. Economics, now we have, families, two-income households. We have to keep up with the Joneses, and so a lot of times we're spending more time working on Sundays. We're not really going to church or engaging in church the way that we once did, and so that support isn't there for us. And so there has been a shift, and there has been an increase, as well as, and this would be a whole nother workshop, is just the trauma from all of the injustices, social justice issues, and racism that we as a people experience and have experienced continuously. And so those are things that, are factors for us. There was a point in time where you didn't really hear a lot about African-American people committing suicide or dying by suicide. So again, I think we need to be aware of those things and aware of our language, because sometimes when we have, I'm just gonna say kids, because that's the age group I tend to work with a lot in sessions. And when we have teenagers or adolescents in our family that start acting a certain way, we don't often, and I'm thinking about my own family, we don't often take a step back and ask why they are responding or acting out in that way. And oftentimes we miss some of those cues because we expect our children, of course, to behave a certain way. We expect our kids to act a certain way. And I know I was raised in a house with two grandparents who were from rural Mississippi, who lived through everything, Jim Crow, segregation, sharecropping. And when they moved to Michigan, they still kind of raised us, and their grandkids lived in the same house with them, and they raised us with the survival mode. And we're continuing to I think raise our kids in survival mode, but our kids nowadays are a little bit different. They need a little bit more than survival mode. And so we want to give them those skills, of course, to survive, but we also want to give them the skills to live and thrive. And so we do want to pay attention to why our kids may be behaving a certain way. Some things with adolescents, when we talk about some of the symptoms of depression or anxiety or suicidal ideation, it looks a little bit different in adolescence, because it may look like things we consider, quote unquote, bad behavior or conduct behavior. It may look like acting out at school. It may look like acting out at home, sneaking out, running away. It may not look like how it would look in an adult, and we want to be mindful of that and really ask the questions that we need to ask of our adolescents. When I'm working with parents, we do talk about just ask. And I'm like, don't ask repeatedly, but ask one time and start paying attention to the answers that you get. One of the things that I talk to parents about is going back to having family dinners. Maybe not every night, maybe it is on Sunday, but the dinner table, when you're eating and you are in a relaxed state, you get so much more information than if you're just, trying to, always give rules and discipline. And even if you can fit in a family dinner during the week, that's a great way to engage, your kids. That's even a great way just to connect as a family as a whole and continue to build those relationships and those levels of support. And to have conversations where it won't lead to discipline, because sometimes adolescents and teenagers and younger kids won't share things with their parents because they do fear getting in trouble. And so we do want to be mindful of those spaces that we can create. And I know we're talking about mental health, but all of these things connect back for me, to mental health. I don't see mental health as being outside of any of these other areas. As Teresa said, mental health is health. Mental health is our relationships. Mental health is how we function every day. And so I see it all being connected, because if we don't feel like we have the support of our family, if we, feel like we are alone or isolated, then it can lead to our thinking not being fully clear. It can lead to us to developing things like depression or developing things like anxiety when we feel like we don't have that support. I do want to shift gears a little bit and just talk a little bit about how we can manage some of these symptoms, as well as more preventive things that we can do. And then I do want to leave time in case anyone has questions. So managing some of the symptoms of depression and anxiety are also things that we should be doing just in general. to manage our health. So I'm going to give a few more kind of practical things. So when I'm talking to a client in session, and one of the first things we talk about is how are they sleeping, what are they eating, and are they moving their body? Those three things can go a long way in managing your mental health. So sleep, are you getting at least 7 hours of sleep? Our bodies need 7 hours of sleep. I know I hear people sometimes say, oh, all I need is like 2 hours of sleep. No, you really don't. You need at least 7. I know when I don't get at least 7 hours of sleep, what's happening. So your body and your mind needs that, because when we sleep, that's our time to rest. It's our time to rejuvenate and to reset, and it's our time to heal our bodies and our minds. So sleep is going to be very important. Now, I'm not a medical doctor. However, I do know the things that we eat can also sometimes impact our mental health. And sometimes the things that we eat, it can also put us in a state where we're not as healthy. And I'm not saying to go vegetarian or totally plant-based, but what I am saying is we want to be mindful of, are we only eating things that are processed, that are high in sugar? Are we only eating or drinking things that are sodas or sugary? Are we incorporating fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, whole grains in our diets? Are we even having a day, in all honesty, that is plant-based, where we're not eating meat? The things that we eat also feed our brain as well as our body, and it feeds our mind. So we want to be mindful of that. And the other thing is, are we moving our body? And I'm not saying go get a gym membership, but a 20 or 30-minute walk will do your body good, and it will also do your mind good. Taking a walk can help you de-stress, and it can help you recenter, so that you are able to maybe think a little bit more clearly about how to handle that problem you're experiencing, or what next steps you may want to take. The things, and I will say as a therapist, the things that I advise my clients to do, I do them myself. And I am going to be transparent and say I am a person that does not like asking for help. Even though I'm telling you all too, you should ask for help for your for mental health issues and seek therapy. But when I advise clients to do things, I do those things myself. And it was hard the first time that I had to ask for help. And I knew it was something that God was doing to let me know that I also have to be able to talk to clients about this and be honest and transparent about it. But if I'm not seeking help myself or asking for help when I need it, how can I tell someone else to do it? And it was a hard lesson for me to learn, and I knew that it was one that I needed to learn to get me to this place. The other thing is that as a therapist, it is a big responsibility to talk to someone about mental health and mental illness, and to even work with individuals that are experiencing mental health challenges or diagnosed with a mental disorder. And I will be honest and say that for a while, I was kind of running from being a mental health professional because of that responsibility. I view it the same way as if you go to your medical doctor with a medical emergency, they're not going to tell you, oh, I'm busy today, so I can't see you. Well, if one of my clients come to me and says that they're suicidal or that they're having a mental health emergency or mental health crisis, I can't say, well, oh, I have to go to sorority meeting today, so I can't talk to you. Nope. If I have to determine and assess that level of risk and do that emergency session. So it is a level of responsibility there for me that I take really seriously. Some other just coping strategies that you can use to manage symptoms of, mental health or mental illness, mood tracking. And I believe that a resource list has gone around. I think taking that inventory of your mood is really helpful so that you understand and know what kind of your baseline functioning is. Doing some other things like journaling. We have cell phones now, so the journaling can look like audio journals. You can do journaling in the apps. The Notes app on your cell phone, that's another way that you can journal. But sometimes just writing out your feelings or how you're dealing with something, or if a situation has occurred, can also help you identify your patterns of thinking so that you can think through then how to reframe that thinking into a little bit more positive or helpful, like I like to call it, a more helpful way of thinking. And with the journaling, it doesn't have to be, you know, a whole paragraph. Sometimes it can just be a sentence that you're writing out over and over. For individuals that I work with that have trouble sleeping at night, I have them do a brain dump at the end of the night where they're just writing out all of the thoughts that are going through their head, not necessarily analyzing it or trying to figure out what it is, but just getting all those thoughts out. The other coping strategy is to think about how you're sleeping and how you are preparing for bed. We all should have some kind of a nighttime routine, some kind of routine that we do at night to help us kind of prepare for bed and settle down in the evening. I know a lot of times, if you're like me, you're watching your favorite TV show or binging a favorite TV show, you're just kind of falling asleep in front of the TV. We really want to have kind of a set structure, so to speak, to our bedtime routine. So determining what time you're going to go to bed, and then also thinking through what are some things that you want to do before as you prepare for bed. That could be taking a hot shower or hot bath just to clear the day away. That could be, of course, engaging in some kind of spiritual practice, reading scripture, praying. I, for one, do meditation in the evening. And then the other thing that I know I get some pushback from when I'm working with teenagers is, where's your cell phone before bed? And we really don't want to have our cell phones in the bed with us, or near the bed, or near our head. So if you aren't able to, say, put your cell phone in another, if you don't feel comfortable putting your cell phone in another room in your house, at least put it on the dresser or someplace away from your bed, away from your head. Because, you know, our cell phones are still giving off all kind of electric charges, and that is also disruptive to your sleep. With the cell phone piece, I do recommend shutting down your cell phone at least an hour or two before bed. So I know on my phone in the settings, and I do this, it doesn't change. My cell phone shuts down at a certain time every night. All the apps shut down. If you're not in my favorites list, you can't call me unless it's an emergency. And I have some people that, you know, of course my mother is in my favorites, so if something happens. And I also shut down social media. I don't look at social media within an hour to an hour and a half before I go to bed. And I know that's hard because of where we are in society and how social media plays an impact. But we want to try to, you know, minimize those stresses, because all those things also impact our mental health. It impacts how we feel. It impacts our outlook on things. So doing those kind of things to take care of yourself. And I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions.
Add two things to your list that's really, really critical. No is an answer. No is an answer. We get overwhelmed by thinking we can't say no to some people. It's a perfectly legitimate answer. And in addition to what Dr. King said, we want to talk about mindfulness. And she talked about social media is a big no-no. And I'm just underscoring what she said about social media and set boundaries. You have to set boundaries for yourself. One of the things that I want to mention before we open the questions is substance abuse, substance use. Right now I'm currently developing some policies for substance use. And there are some wonderful folks among us who self-medicate. They don't understand the things that we just talked about. So they smoke marijuana, they drink, and there is an increasing amount of drinking. And there are people who can be drunk and go to work and still function. So I just want to bring that to your attention. Self-medication in the Black community, because we don't seek help like we ought to. there's a lot of drinking among folks who we know well, and we just would never think that they'd be drinking that much. It's going to affect your body, so be mindful. And if you know someone who's drinking, especially if they're drinking alone, that's a clear indication that there's a problem. So I want to thank you for your time, and Dr. King and I are available, and I hope we shed a little bit of light on some of what you were here to do today. Any questions?
Can we give another hand to Dr. Surpass and Dr. King? This was an excellent presentation, and aside from my pastor's sermon, I don't think I've seen people in the sanctuary so engaged. So thank you. We will open it up for a few brief moments if anybody has questions. I think I got everyone and gave you the resources that Dr. King referred to. There are additional copies in the vestibule. If anybody doesn't have it, feel free to raise your hand. Do we have any, Sister Bell is walking here with the microphone. Yes.
Thank you so much for this discussion. So this question is for Dr. King. I wanted to know if you can outline, what distinguishes depression from bipolar disorder, and then also, what are some ways that we can support family members who are currently battling mental health concerns, and specifically, I have a younger sister who was recently diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and she is on the West Coast. She's a military spouse, so she's not nearby, and she also has 4 young children that she's in care of, solo for a lot of the time, as my brother-in-law, he's in the Marine Corps, so he's out, or he's away often. And she had recently called, and I try to make sure, I do make sure, so between my mom, my sister, and I, that we are talking on the phone at least one time a week, and it's usually for like hours on end, just to kind of be that support for her. But one thing that really broke my heart when she called, and this was when she had recently gotten the diagnosis, because she had been diagnosed with depression before, but she had stated that she was broken. And I think there was a lot of discouragement on her end, because she kind of looked at depression as like, I can get out of this, I can make my way through this as long as I have like the right tools. And then, she got the following diagnosis, and I think she feels like, she literally said, like, my brain is broken. And so with her being all the way over in California, she's taking care of 4 young children, ranging from like 2 to 14. She's doing the military spouse thing. So what are some ways that family members can really be a valuable support to anyone that we know who is like dealing with that currently?
I mean, I think it's really by doing what you said, just making sure that you're staying in touch with that person, but also understanding that you can't fix it for the person. And you can let your sister know that it doesn't mean that she's broken. We all have different things that we experience and that we handle in life. I don't typically work with individuals that have a diagnosis of bipolar. Bipolar, from my experience, it's a cyclical extreme mood swings. And there has been some research about chemical imbalances with someone diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Depression can be a function of bipolar disorder. You have individuals who might be diagnosed with bipolar 1 or bipolar 2, and there are some features of depression. The main difference between depression and bipolar disorder is with bipolar disorder, it's those extreme mood swings that can be cyclical. So it's going from a really high to where the person, they would call it a quote unquote manic episode, is where the person is just in a euphoric state. And this is where you see individuals who may have this burst of energy and they're up at like 2 o'clock in the morning cleaning their house, or they might go on a binge shopping spree. And then it's the really low lows, and that is where the symptoms of depression come in, where they're not able, to manage those symptoms. And so it's that kind of cycle for bipolar disorder. But as long as your sister is engaging with a therapist and following that treatment regimen of, I'm assuming probably medication, then, she'll be fine. I would also recommend her seeking out some services from the VA. Many military bases also have services for military spouses and children, so I would recommend her seeking out some services and supports through there as well, especially for the times when her husband may be deployed for a length of time.
Thank you so much. And also to add, thank you for the inclusion for like the sleep, the eating. I think those are definitely some tips that we would absolutely recommend to her.
And
Excuse me,
also,
recommend to her.
You're welcome. And I also recommend just also making sure that you educate yourself about bipolar disorder. SAMHSA.gov is a great site. I think it might be in the list of resources. It's SAMHSA.gov. NAMI.org is another one, another great site, NAMI.org. That's a great place for education, for family members or friends of someone who may be experiencing mental illness.
Thank you.
So let me just add to what Dr. King said. I primarily treat people who have bipolar disorders. It is not, once you've gotten the diagnosis and you're being properly managed, there is no real difference in terms of one is worse than the other in terms of a major depression. You don't want to see a major depression. You don't want to see someone totally immobilized by a major depression. So when people say bipolar, it's a panic. But some people reside in the middle. They don't sell their house or run away, and they're just right there in the middle. Today they're not feeling so good. They're a little manic. They'll clean the house until sun up to sundown, or they may not. They may get irritable. That's one of the, and that's mostly why people seek help. The irritability, and the family members are saying, what's going on with you, and the mood swings. But it's not really the end of the world when you have a diagnosis of bipolarity. It is really, so you're bipolar. Manage it. That's all that it's about. And seeking therapy, learning about the disease yourself and the person who's been diagnosed, and how to manage those symptoms. I am feeling a little bit manicky today. Let me find an alternate behavior that is more positive that I can do, as opposed to selling the house, moving to the West Coast or the North Coast. So there are so many things you can do. And trust me, I have seen a lot of people just up and moving, or selling the car, or buying a brand new car when they really don't need it. So there are some things to be of concern, but once people around you recognize it, you can become, stabilized. So it's not the worst diagnosis. Thank you.
One last thing that I did want to add is just a few points on the difference between mental health, mental illness, and then a mental disorder. And so mental health is really our functioning. It's our being able to function in a healthy and effective manner, resulting in being able to be productive in activities like cleaning our house, engaging with family, going to work, and being able to adapt to change or cope with adversity when it comes. And then mental illness are the conditions that affect the person's thinking, and those that affects how the person relates in their daily functioning. And then a mental disorder are those disturbances that we talked about, like depression, anxiety, and bipolar disorder. So I do like to make sure that we distinguish between that, because sometimes we use mental health, mental illness, and mental disorders interchangeably.
Thank you again. And Drs. King and Dr. DePass, if we can get your contact information, and we'll email that out, because you may have persons who want to seek out they are professionals who do this for a living. So again, thank you all so much for coming today. Did you have something to say? This has been a wonderful presentation. Again, mental health awareness, we know we highlight it during May, but it's something we should be looking at all year long. So thank you again.